Let's get into our subject matter today. Always got to do this. We love it when we bring in friends from USC. John Thompson is with us. He is a liability advisor and a great friend. And one of the things I love about John, he's always willing to help. And the nice thing is, it's fun when you're in an industry like I'm in, because I'm in radio and I deal in a world of abundance. And what I mean by abundance is there's no way that I can help everybody. Our team can't help everybody in the mortgage world. And I like helping people. And John's got the same mentality. He's helped me many, many times. We're in the same industry. We both make a living in the mortgage world, but we also both make a life in helping people. Welcome, John. Glad to have you with us.
Thank you. Great to be here again, Ron. And love your first little segment there. I love your energy, and it's great. I can't keep up, but we'll try.
I'm sure you can. So your practice is right in the heart of where all of the turmoil is in California, right?
Yeah. So my primary market is the San Gabriel Valley, Pasadena, Altadena, and I also worked in the Palisades for about 6 years. Several years ago. So we had a lot of clients and friends and business partners that lost their homes, were impacted by the fires in many different ways. It's devastating. But at the same time, as you point out, there is abundance and the human spirit comes through very quickly. And we realized that the things we could do for people had to be around sort of getting resources. We couldn't just be inactive. We had to start doing something very quickly. And so we started putting together resources from every place we could find and just sharing what we had out there.
And you've put that on your website, so it's free to everybody to get a hold of.
Yep.
And Josh, you've got that link on here, don't you, for us for John's site? And let's just talk about some of this resources that you found, John, because one of the things that I love the fact that our governor has talked to every mortgage company or servicing company, and taking credit for something that you and I know was out there long before the governor even got on TV, right?
Absolutely, but that's okay. It's the way of the world, the way of California.
Yeah, we don't care. I mean, as long as people get the information, right? And the bottom line is you have to take action on the mortgage side, right? I mean, you're still responsible for your mortgage, but there's resources, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the initial questions people had were, do I have to keep paying my mortgage, right? And it's by now people probably realize, of course, you have to keep paying your mortgage. The loan was not made to the land. It was not made to the house. It was made to you, right? So you borrowed the money. You still owe the money. But lenders they're gonna work through forbearances, right? You have to communicate. Like anything else that has to do with finance, communication is important. So we just told people, look, you got to communicate quickly. If you've had a loss and you can't afford to make payments and you're in a cash flow challenge now, the lender's going to work with you. And that's what they do. And so forth. So if people should be reaching out to their lender if they've not already, or, friends, call your lender and start working through it all.
Lenders don't want property, do they? They don't want the property back.
Very common, right? People always think, oh no, the lender wants to take back money. The lenders, they're not in the business of selling homes. Real estate professionals sell homes, not banks and mortgage companies. We don't want them.
Yeah, and if we can help somebody out, I mean, the key there is don't put your head in the sand.
Yeah.
Right. And I know that there's a lot of people right now that are suffering.
Yeah.
And they're looking out there and they're saying, I watched it and I'm gonna throw out there, because I've talked about this. We did a program early on, and I shared that a very dear friend of mine lost their house, because we're friends with the couple. They lost their house in the Canyon fire. That was 2007, and she's done a lot of things to help people now since then, because she didn't want to be a victim. She made a mission to go out and try and help people. We think that, send some clothes, right? A lot of these folks don't even know where they're going to get a toothbrush.
Yeah, exactly.
So, once you start getting things under control, the idea of helping somebody is, help them with that toothbrush, get them a gift card to Target, or Costco, because if you're one of those people that woke up in the middle of the night, you may not even have a wallet.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, those are some of the things.
My sister wrote a story. She's a writer, and she writes for Eater online, and she had 22 minutes. Her house did survive, but she had 22 minutes to get out from neighbor's knock until she was out the door. And so the story is about the things that she remembered to take, and it's not the things you would think, right? People, you don't need a lot of stuff, right? And that whole story was about stuff and things like that. So, but you're in a panic. You might only have 10, 15, 20 minutes to get out of your house. So being prepared and thinking about those things are important is also really critical.
Yeah. So the idea there is as somebody that wasn't involved, you and I, thankfully we were not there. But we can go out and we can give our knowledge, because one of the things that you and I both do is we talk to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Right. We work with a lot of families that were out there. We also know, and we both, well, you've got gray hair, I've got no hair. We've been around, and we know that there's going to be some scammers out there, and we want to make sure that people are talking to a professional. If somebody's offering you something, crazy number for your house, call John, call me.
Yeah.
Right. We've got
there's already been, multiple stories of, price gouging and stuff like that. There was already, the Department of Justice went after a couple of realtors in our local marketplace that were renting homes for like $10,000 or $12,000 a month when the market value is maybe $4,000 or $5,000. And I just can't believe people would do that. So, but be aware, right? We know there are unscrupulous people out in the world who are looking to take advantage of any kind of thing like this. So use your trusted resources, Ron, myself, people around you, your advisors. So anyways, good stuff out there.
I think there's a special place for people like that.
Yeah.
But I'm also a big believer in karma. Right? If you're out doing that kind of stuff to somebody who's suffering, that karma is an issue that, I think it's gonna be a case that really happens. So John and I are going to continue this conversation. We're going to talk about the Department of Insurance, some tips there. There's claimant areas, FEMA, SBA. We've got all kinds of executive orders, property taxes. There's so much in the world of finance. And I know once you're safe, once you're away from the situation, whether you've lost your property or not, but once you've got your health, then you can start worrying about some of these other things that John and I are going to talk about. We can't help your health, but maybe we can give you some guidance on attorneys and financial planners and taxes and liabilities and things like that. Continue our conversation with John Thompson this morning. He is a liability advisor with Simple Mortgage. We're chatting about, some of the resources that are available, some of the guidance that John and I have learned over time with regard to some of these natural disasters. We've got and it's a shame because one of the things, I'm going to share this with you. And I've been talking about this for a long time, and I've learned a lot of this. John is a master in an organization that I'm really relatively new with. But, we talk about a lot of folks are real excited, John, about having their house paid off. And sometimes that can be pretty risky, can't it?
It certainly can be. I think about 36 hours after the fires were going, I got a call from one of the financial, advisors we work with. And she said, my client's been working for years. She got her house paid off. And then, of course, she forgot to renew the insurance, right? She didn't pay the premium the next year because she's like, well, I don't have a mortgage anymore. I'm not required to have the insurance, without thinking, unintended consequences are everywhere. So, they want to know if I could help. And I'm like, you're gonna have to call the insurance company and maybe you'll get lucky. So yeah, those kind of things happen. Paying off your house, I realize it feels good, right, for a lot of people, but realizing there's risk to having a significant amount of your wealth tied up in your real estate, when there's still ways to kind of keep it liquid that Ron can share with you and we can chat about. So it does present a risk.
As we get older, one of the big things that a lot of people are so excited about is getting their mortgage paid off, and you focus a lot on the reverse mortgage, right?
Yeah, I do. Yep.
And that's a way of mitigating some of the risks, so you don't have all your. I mean, if somebody said, I think I've got my entire 401k, my IRA, my liquid assets, and I want to go put them all in Bitcoin. But we'd probably try and share the idea that Bitcoin may or may not be good, and it may or may not be a great investment, but being over exposed to one item causes risk.
Yeah, all the eggs in one basket, right? The old story of having all eggs. So the reality is, as Ron mentioned, even if you want to have a paid off home or somehow you've got the balance really down low and so forth, we would always recommend creating some kind of tool to have access to that home equity if and when there's opportunities, there's risk, and it could be home equity line of credit. It could be a reverse mortgage HECM with a line of credit. It could be the all-in-one tool, mortgage that's out there. So lots of different ways to access equity, maybe without incurring the full payment, but just having access to it for emergencies, right? If you had $1 million in the bank, that makes you feel good, but the reality is you might have $1 million in your house and have no way of getting to it, right? So the fact that houses are not liquid is what presents a risk for people when things like disasters happen, right? That's the challenge, right? We had 3 clients that were in the middle of a reverse mortgage. All 3 were in the middle of it. All 3 lost their homes, one in the Palisades, 2 in Altadena. So they went from about to eliminate a payment to be able to stay in their home for the rest of their life without a payment and improve their cash flow to being both homeless and continuing to make a mortgage payment. So you feel really badly for those people, and hopefully insurance will settle and so forth, but we don't know the outcomes yet.
Absolutely. The one thing we do know, the one thing we do know is, contact John, contact me, and at least get a consultation sooner rather than later.
Yep.
So John, you've seen some things out there. We talked a little, you mentioned a little bit about price gouging.
Yeah.
And I noticed on your site, and Josh, put that link back on there again, if you would. You've got an article on there about price gouging as well. Not only is it illegal, but there are some resources out there, and the governor's put out some orders as well, right?
Yeah, he did. He put out an executive order, saying that it's, you cannot price gouge, right? Here are the rules. They did allow for a slight increase, maybe I think it was 10% to sort of the market value of rent and real estate and so forth. But also there's a link there where you can report it. If you feel like there's some price gouging going on, you've heard about stuff, you can report it right there. There's a link, and it's the Office of the Attorney General's office, and find it on that same link.
Beautiful. And I'm going to take and put a lot of John's resources right there on our rsrlinks.com/fire.
Please do.
Yeah. So, and John and I share all this stuff before, well before we even plan on doing a radio show on it.
Yeah,
we share resources because we're both out there just looking to help people.
The other thing I'll just mention real quick, Ron, on property taxes, you're probably going to touch on this anyway, but the reality is that people who have been affected by the fires in LA County and Ventura County are going to have a property tax essentially deferral. So they'll be able to avoid, making their full property tax payment. They'll get pushed off for a while. So that's going to help people with cash flow and some things like that. So you may have heard of that, but it's pretty simple. Go Google it for your county tax assessor's office, and you can get the forms to do that. So start that now. Why not? Even if you're in LA County and you feel like there might be some cash flow issues coming up, you're eligible to take advantage of it. So,
well, and we're looking at some of the articles that are coming out and some of the actions from the city council. People are going to have to help. Families are going to have to help their family, or should. I mean, that's my personal preferences, my values. So there could be some hardship, even if you're, like John says, if you're not affected directly. You might be helping your family get into a hotel, get into a dealing with insurance, bringing more people into your house, more expenses. There is the SBA has put out a document, the SBA disaster recovery. Mm-hmm. Again, a link on John's site, on our site. You can get that information. John, I don't know. I didn't see this, but and I don't know whether you did or not. I know on your site you had a you reference a panel of attorneys, Han and Han.
Yeah, I got to put that. I just noticed that I haven't put up the recording yet. So the insurance is really an interesting subject. I've learned a lot about it just in the last couple of weeks. So Han and Han's a pretty well-known estate planning attorney, firm in the Pasadena area. So they had a panel discussion with multiple insurance attorneys, right? And I'll put the recording back up there, hopefully later on today. But in any case, the couple of takeaways that I'm going to want to share with you and with the audience, the insurance companies, are going to play fair with most people. I think that we as consumers tend to think the insurance companies are going to take advantage of us. They really don't want to pay. And that's not the case. If you had protection and all those kind of things, the reality is let the insurance company do what they're going to do. They have to follow guidelines. They have to give you an offer within 30 days, I believe it is. They have to get an adjuster out there very quickly. And then if you feel like you're not being treated fairly, that's when you go to the next step, right? Because lawsuits already happening, mass lawsuits, different things like that, mass action, they call it, are already happening. There's been attorneys out just, literally sitting in the lobbies of hotels, signing people up for these lawsuits. So I don't like to hear that at all, right? So just kind of work with your insurance company and then see what happens from there. And if you do need an attorney, then great. That's when you get an attorney. At least that's my thought.
Yeah, and that's great information. And one of the things is I'm going to recommend to you is before you settle it all with the insurance company, as much as you can, read your contract.
Yep.
Right? Because your contract is going to say that you've got an allowance in there for a certain amount of dollars for additional living expenses. Mm-hmm. And that could be, they're not going to pay, they're going to look at, and I was displaced from floods in my house a couple of times. So I learned the hard way. They're going to look and say, okay, what did you normally spend for meals each day? What's the difference between what you would normally spend and what you're spending now? Because you're eating out, you don't have a kitchen anymore.
Yeah.
Right. There are additional living expenses. So you've got a limit. So you can go and get a hotel room or a house that's similar to what you had, if you can find it. But I mean, again, those are all parts of your contract. Read it so you know what you're entitled to. So love that one. I see that we've got the property taxes you mentioned on there. And I also saw there's a pretty good, I think there was a Zoom on there that I think the replay is now available from one of the insurance. I think it was United Policy, I think you had on there.
So United Policyholders, it was not a Zoom call, but I'm glad you brought that up because I had never known about that site before. That was recommended through this panel of attorneys, insurance attorneys. So that tool is designed by essentially to help all consumers. It was really, really comprehensive, Ron. And so, I encourage people, it's called, uphelp.org, uphelp.org. And again, it's on our site, it'll be on Ron's site. But, and one of the key things, another thing I learned was inventory, right? So people are kind of panicked about inventory, like, oh, do I need to make an inventory? I need every room. It's heartbreaking to say, I'd sit down with your family and go, okay, what was in your room? What was in the kitchen? What was in the living room? What was it? Those things are going to be really difficult for people to work their way through. So first off, the insurance company said, if you have contents insurance and the policy limits are, well in excess of what you think all your stuff is worth, you don't need to do an inventory. It's only when your limits are underinsured, which is unfortunately probably a lot of people. But there's a tool on there where it'll actually help suggest things and what the approximate values are. An Excel spreadsheet, download it. It'll walk you room by room, and it'll already tell you kind of things you might have had in your den or in your kitchen, and then help you kind of fill it out. So anyway, I never saw that. It was a wonderful tool that I saw in there too. UP Household Inventory Tool, if you need to do it.
And that's a great tool. And I'm going to recommend, we actually talked about this either yesterday or last week, I think. We did a segment on, having this, everybody should have this done. Go and walk through your house and take a video of your entire house, room by room, narrate it. If you've got some things that are abnormal, you might want to put down serial numbers, make, model, and have that not in your house, because if there's a disaster, you don't want that to go as well. And we put on there, Dropbox and Google Drive, and there's several others, iCloud, whatever you use. But we're going to put that on the site as well, rsrlinks.com/fire. We'll put a link to the replay of the segment we did there. And don't think that I'm so smart. I'm really good at talking to other people and adopting. So this actually came from an insurance company that said, hey, you know something? These are 4 steps you need to do. We're going to continue our conversation with John Thompson. We're talking about resources that, you know, you can do after the fact, and maybe some ideas that you might want to take proactively, because yes, we know what happened in Palisades. We know what happened at the Eaton fire. But did you think about what's going on right now in Laguna Beach, or 6 months ago in Rancho Palos Verdes when those houses started sliding? Don't just think it's going to happen to somebody else. We hope it doesn't happen to them, and hope it doesn't happen to you. Hope is not a plan. Continuing our conversation, John Thompson is with us. We're going through some items. If you were affected by the wildfires, we're sorry for that. We know that it's a long road ahead. And I'm going to tell you right here, right now, that, you know, again, I only can reference my friends who had their house destroyed in a wildfire. This is not a short process. Don't think it's going to you're going to be rebuilt overnight. I know I listened to the president's press conference with the mayor. It's a long process, and gear up for it. And, you know, one of the things that I'm going to throw out there, and I know I don't have it in my documentation, John, I don't know if you have it in yours either, but you might be wanting to look at some counseling, right? Because one of the toughest things I've heard of over my entire career in the mortgage world and in the financial services. And I did the first loan I helped somebody with was in 1983. Josh, don't laugh. I know you weren't around then. But, you know, building a house is very, very taxing on a relationship. Now, counseling might be something that you want to go and explore and talk to somebody. I'm sure there's resources out. John, have you heard of any resources for that?
I have interest. I don't have any directly on our site, other than I know that United Policyholder site does have, you know, some resources around mental care and self-care, because I agree with you. It's going to be really tough for these people. And we out here who were not affected directly are going to slowly, it's going to seep out of our brains. We're going to forget about it over time, but those people are going to live through it for years and years and years. So they probably will need some counseling, and so it's kind of help. But also, our jobs as professionals, continue to check in with your friends and partners, because they're going to need your help probably for years to come, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's really, really sound advice. So one of the other things I saw on your site, I see the checklist. You've got that on there. Starting a claim, that's a great one. Get on it quickly.
Yeah. You know, another question, hey, Rod, another question that has come up quite a bit is this question of adjusters, right? Private versus public adjusters. And have you heard these terms, the public adjuster terms? I'm assuming you have. Yep. So for people that don't know, you know, the adjuster that comes out from your insurance company, State Farm or whoever it is, right? That's the adjuster that works for the insurance company. They're the ones that put together the numbers that says, we're going to pay your claim based on all this data and information. And that's fine. Allow them to do their work. But there's outside third-party companies called public adjusters. And these folks, for a percentage or for a fee, will also run the numbers for you. And of course, their effort is to, you know, they get a piece of it, right? So they're working towards a number they think may be different than the insurance companies. Again, advice from the insurance, attorneys: allow the company to do their internal adjustment and adjusting. And then if you, again, feel like it's not fair at that point, that's when you turn to a public adjuster. You don't need them early in the process, because you don't want them to get a percentage of the policy limit you already have coming to you, right? You only want their help if you want to go above the policy limit because they think you were shorted in some area, right? So those are public adjusters. Some work on percentage and some work on a fee base. I have a couple of them that we know in our area as well. So.
Yeah, and one of the things that to tag on with that, just from my own experience, unfortunately, is you can get a public adjuster. There's 3 different types. You've got the insurance company adjuster, you've got an independent adjuster, who generally the insurance companies hire because they don't have enough adjusters for everything that's going on right now. And then you've got the public adjuster who will work for you. And like John said, they'll work on a percentage. A lot of them will do, like, when I was going through it, it was 10% from $1, or you can go 30% of additional dollars. So once you find out what John just said, you get their number, and they come back and they say you're entitled to X. They get 30% of X plus minus whatever they came up with. But a lot of times they know the policies a lot better than we do.
Yep.
So there may be a good resource in there. So great advice, John. Yeah, make sure that you're hear what they have. They're going to want their person anyway.
Sure.
So, make sure that you're looking into those things. And again, if you're not feeling comfortable, there's all kinds of resources. John, talk about some of the extra links that you've come up with, Commissioner, and I see a one sheet that you've got. Talk about some of those.
Yeah, so I reach out to some of our partners, and I love how you keep saying that people need to have professionals in their corner. I agree wholeheartedly, right? So we've put, a wildfire insurance, cheat sheet from one of our partners, our insurance partners, right? And so there's a whole list of things you can think through and work through. And this is for someone, who's not experienced a disaster, but just is wants to make sure they're covering all their bases. I think that's a wonderful one. Another interesting thing that I learned this way was what's called a 1033 exchange. So a 1033 exchange makes investors who might have lost homes in a disaster, they're eligible for an exchange of property and the tax benefits, much like what's called a 1031 exchange, which is where you exchange an appreciated piece of real estate. So I know we have investors on your show, Ron, and that kind of stuff. So the 1031 exchange allows you to exchange one piece of real estate for another without paying the tax today. You just defer the tax to later on. The 1033 allows it to happen for a home that's been destroyed in a disaster. So you can go and replace that piece of real estate and not pay the tax that's due today, right? It'll be deferred just like a 1031 exchange. So there's a whole article on that as well, which I found fascinating because I never knew about it till this happened, right?
Well, I can tell you I've known about it for a whole long, I think it's about 40 seconds now.
1033, so that was an interesting one.
Yeah, so that's great information. If you go to John's site, you've also got a link there to quite a few different banks because you may or may not have your mortgage statement right now. That's gonna help again. Information on there, and again, we're gonna kind of marry a lot of data together. So John's site, my site, and I'm gonna make a thought here, John. I don't think tell me if I'm sure you'll agree with me. If you've got questions,
yeah,
call us. Call either one of us because neither John. I think you mentioned you've never been through a disaster like this personally,
no, not directly.
But I know that John does have a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of people that he can reach out to. So just like me, if I don't know something, I'm not afraid to say I don't know it. But my guess is that which I don't know, I know somebody who does know. And I'm more than happy. I know John's shaking his head. He's more than happy to help. Right? That's the world. And again, I go back to what we were talking about when it came to these price gougers. Same concept. It's karma. We don't need to be compensated for everything we do because what goes around comes around. And I hope that John, I hope that myself, we never experience this, but we certainly do want to have the to know that something we're out there helping people and willing to help in any possible way. Our resources are opened. I'll date myself again. Our Rolodex is opened. I know a lot of people don't know what a Rolodex is, but
well, my first loan was in 1989, Ron, so I'm not far behind you. So there you go.
Yeah, so so we've been doing it a long time, right? So we know a lot of people, and we're more than happy to help. And as we find more resources, I know that John's doing this because I've got his site up on my screen. So as he finds new resources, he's putting things on there that are new updates.
Yeah.
I'm putting new updates on ours as well. So go either place. Go to John's, which Josh is going to put on the screen, and because it's not as easy for me to remember. But it's simplemortgage.com/fire-disaster-resources. Or you can go to rsrlinks.com/fire. Either one, you're going to get all kinds of resources. And if I don't have something, I'm happy to call John, vice versa. And we want you to, our prayer is that this process can be as smooth as possible, knowing that there's a rocky road ahead.
Yeah.
And we're here to help.